It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of June 11th, 2004. We've got 4 films to look at, but this is one of those weekends where you have a lot of disappointment, a lot of really bad movies, but truly somewhere deep down in this massive pile of shit we've got to talk about here, maybe we can find that one little piece of corn that's actually not that bad. Am I right or am I right or am I right? Right? Anyway, let's get right to it. Let's start digging into this. Let's start with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Vin Diesel in his sequel to Pitch Black, and that is The Chronicles of Riddick. Oh, we're afraid of the dark. We're just not afraid of you, Vin Diesel. Yeah, this is a movie that is very pretentious, if you will, but you have Richard Bruno Riddick, once again played by Vin Diesel, now a hunted man finding himself in the middle of 2 opposing forces in a major crusade. Lord Marshall, played by Colm Feore, is a warrior priest who is the leader of a sect that is waging the 10th and perhaps final crusade 500 years in the future. Arion, played by Dame Judi Dench, is an ambassador for the elemental race. She is an ethereal, E-T-H-E-R-E-A-L. I don't know if I'm saying that right. She's a being. I already said it already. I'm moving on. She is a being who helps Riddick unearth his origins, and you see Tandy Newton in there as well. And yeah, one of the biggest problems that this movie had in particular is that it took a really cool character from Pitch Black, and like I said, it makes the story much more pretentious and trying to add more of weight to it that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. There's a whole lot of stuff in this movie that does not make any sense whatsoever. You have one of the worst lines one of the worst lines ever, where you have the kid asking, "Are you going to stop the monsters now?" And Vin Diesel goes, "I am the monster." It's just like, what does that even mean? Like, you are not a threatening person whatsoever in this. You're a cool-looking dude, but you are not threatening by any means necessary. And like I said, it's way too serious for its own good. It gets way too pretentious. It's trying to have this, like, it seems like it's trying to have this political message to it, but it feels too much like the Star Wars prequels, honestly. Like, it's trying to it's adding way too much stuff into something that does not need to be in a movie like this. And it would help if the movie was actually fun or enjoyable, but no, it's very bleak. The characters are badly written, wasting a lot of great talent in the cast here. It's just not a very good movie in general. But kind of like with Van Helsing the month before, it did eventually lead to a pretty cool direct-to-DVD movie, The Chronicles of Riddick: Dark Fury, which is probably the overall best thing from this series, the more I think about it, because Pitch Black was pretty good. Riddick is definitely better than this movie here. At least that one at least knew it had to go back to being fun again, but this, they were just going way too far with it. This is a film that is literally trying way too hard to be this tough, serious, satirical, deep movie, when it's just like, no, go back to being the fun movie that you were with Pitch Black. This is not what we want to see here, and this backfired spectacularly, and it was not a big hit when it came out. They were really hyping this up. They had like a trailer in front of the Friends during the Friends finale, thinking that, okay, let's get the eyes here, and then surely they'll come and see this movie, and needless to say, that was not the case. But yeah, that is The Chronicles of Riddick. So let's see what our next movie is, and how appropriate. As you said yes to this movie, and unfortunately, because you said yes to it because you thought it was done by the Coen brothers, you had to be forced to do the sequel. And this is Garfield the movie. This is the movie that was the first big screen adaptation of the classic comic strip by Jim Davis, and it stars Breckin Meyer as John Arbuckle, Jennifer Love Hewitt as Dr. Liz Wilson, and Bill Murray as the voice of Garfield. And as the story shows, the movie is basically just kind of an origin story based off of Here Comes Garfield, where Garfield and John are living together, and then he decides to take care of this dog named Odie, and chaos and hilarity ensues, or at least this movie should make you think that. But this is an intriguing movie for me because I should hate this movie. It does Garfield, one of my favorite animated characters of all time, so wrong. It takes his world and the characters around him and just waters them down to no end. John Arbuckle is not the same John Arbuckle we've seen from the comics, the specials, or in Garfield and Friends. No, he's just Breckin Meyer. He's just a nice guy who just has no real problems whatsoever. And Liz is nothing like she is in the comics or the specials. She's not always. She doesn't have that love-hate relationship with John. No, it's Jennifer Love Hewitt. If we have to show her having some love-hate to her, that'd be so against type of her. Like she's literally just playing herself in the movie. The rest of the characters are nowhere near as close to their original counterparts. Like, yeah, Odie's not yellow because it's not like there are yellow dogs out there. Oh wait, yes they are. Normal's in the movie, the cutest cat in the world, just played by a random guy in the movie. Like, he's just a normal character. Arlene, one of the characters that they don't even use in the cartoon Garfield and Friends, the original Garfield and Friends, she's in here, except she's voiced by Grace from Will and Grace, and that's just all she is. She's just Grace from Will and Grace as a cat. I mean, that's literally all the characters in this movie. They watered this world down so much. Fox did not give a shit about this movie whatsoever. I should despise this movie on so many levels, and yet I don't. I can't really figure out why that's the case. There's just so many flaws to this film, so many faults to it. Garfield's animation is so bad. The story is very predictable. The human characters are so dumb. Even the villain in the movie, played by Stephen Tobolowsky, Ned Ryerson, kind of tying it back to what I said at the beginning of the episode. But yeah, he's not that great of a villain. I mean, he thinks that if he takes this dog, it's just gonna be so much better for his career. And yeah, like, not even the main characters, but the supporting characters too. Again, something I should hate, but yet I don't. Bill Murray. He only took this movie because he thought that this was a Garfield movie written by Joel Cohen of the Coen Brothers, when it was actually written by another person with the same name, but with an H in there, in Cohen, Cohen. And I mean, he's written some good stuff before. He wrote Toy Story. I mean, but he thought that this was written by the Coen Brothers, and I don't get why he would think that, because why would the Coen Brothers want to tackle a Garfield movie? I mean, like, that makes no sense whatsoever. And unfortunately, because he said yes to this, he was already locked into a sequel before the first one ever came out. This is one of the few times I think Bill Murray has one of those big regrets of his career. And he's made some movies that have not been that great, but this, I feel like, is probably one of his biggest regrets in general. Again, should lead to something I hate, but I don't. I really don't. Like, I really cannot explain what it is. There's just something about this movie that is so insulting to the Garfield franchise, and yet it's a movie that whenever it's on, I feel kind of obligated to at least watch it. I don't know. Maybe it's because of Bill Murray. I mean, Bill Murray, I think, is somebody that I've wanted to hear as the voice of Garfield for a long period of time. Him and Norm Macdonald, but of course, that last one's not going to happen now. But it's maybe the nostalgia, how excited I was when I was 15 seeing this. I mean, this was a movie that I was really looking forward to, because I'm a big Garfield fan in general. Hell, I showed you my Garfield love when I did the Garfield movie review. I mean, it's a movie that's not good at all. But it has that kind of a weird charm that keeps me coming back to it. I mean, it's kind of a guilty pleasure. I know it's bad. I know it's not a good movie, but it's just a film that I always keep coming back to as a guilty pleasure film. I should hate the movie, and yet I don't. And, but there are positives. I mean, yeah, you get to hear Bill Murray as Garfield. That's cool. But probably the best positive of the whole thing is that without this movie, we wouldn't have gotten these little beauties right here. Yeah, we wouldn't have gotten the Garfield and Friends TV series that I grew up watching as a kid on CBS and Nickelodeon. They would have never put these DVDs out there because there would have been no reason to. And, yeah, this is one of my favorite TV shows of all time. I mean, this is a show that is still held up after all these years. It's gotten a lot smarter and a lot funnier. This was Tiny Toons and Animaniacs level of comedy before Tiny Toons and Animaniacs came out. I mean, this show still holds up after all these years, and the fact that this movie was coming out and they felt like they had to cash in with the DVDs, I guess I should be grateful for that, for this movie, because if we didn't have this movie, these episodes, the specials, would have never come out on DVD. They would have been stuck in purgatory forever, but I guess that's the one thing I should be grateful for with this, because yeah, that's the only real reason this movie kind of I'm grateful to exist, because we wouldn't have these beauties right here if that wasn't the case. Now, Tale of Two Kitties, whole other story altogether, but we'll get to that one when we get to that one. But as far as this movie goes, It's bad. It's a bad movie, but it's a guilty pleasure movie for me. And I'm not one of those people that thinks the recent Garfield movie is worse than this. I mean, this is still bad, but the Garfield movie was at least trying and succeeded in most elements, but not all the way through. I could say it's a great film, but a good fun film. It's still the best Garfield movie we have, but again, not by that much, all things considered. But yeah, that's Garfield the movie for you. So with that said, let's go ahead and move on to some more disappointment. Here's Nicole Kidman in Frank Oz's remake of The Stepford Wives. That should be a really good teaser trailer for a bad movie, but even that trailer, like, everything about that trailer, just, I should like it, but at the same time, it's just, like, they're trying way too hard, man. Like, the whole thing about, like, your whole life is perfect, and I'm looking at this whole thing with, like, all the fancy cars, the fancy clothing, and just, like, my life ain't that, man. Because Nicole Kidman is trying way too hard to be sexy in that, like, trying to be like an obnoxious dumb blonde. But you know, dumb blondes try better than that, man. Like, that should have been the red flag going into this movie. The second red flag, a sci-fi comedy remake of a movie that was in the 1970s, based off of the original 1975 movie, was seen as a satirical psychological thriller. And they made it into a sci-fi comedy in the same vein as Men in Black, except that, yeah, it'd be like making a version of the Body Snatchers as a comedy, and not as a dark comedy, which probably could be done, but they just keep making it the same bland thing every single time. But this is The Stepford Wives. Joanne Everhart, played by Nicole Kidman, is a wildly successful president of a television network after a series of shocking events, suffering a nervous breakdown, and is moved by her milquetoast of her husband, played by Matthew Broderick, which that's probably the best way to describe Matthew Broderick in general here, milquetoast, to the chic, upper class, and very modern planned community of Stepford, Connecticut. Once there, she makes good friends with the acerbic Bobby Markowitz, played by Bette Midler, who is a Jewish writer who's also a recovering alcoholic. Together they find out, much to their growing stupor and then horror, that all the housewives in town are strangely blissful and somehow doomed. What is going on behind the closed doors of the Stepford Men's Association and the Stepford Day Spa? Why is everything perfect there? Will it be too late for Joanne and Bobby when they finally find out? Do you really give a shit at this point? Because you've seen the trailers, but if you've seen the trailers for it, you pretty much know what happens after that. And it's just like, you know, this is a movie that is really could have been a whole lot better than it actually is. But, man, this is just a bad movie, man. This is a really terrible movie that wastes so much talent. This is Frank Oz who directed this, and the writer of this is Paul Rudnick. These two guys made In and Out 7 years ago, and made a great film out of that. How do you screw this up completely? This is a film that, it's so bad that even people, it doesn't help that right off the bat, there was a lot of problems behind the scenes. None of the stars really got along with director Frank Oz in general. Nicole Kidman, Bette Midler, Christopher Walken, Glenn Close, Roger Bart. Even Matthew Broderick said that making the film was not enjoyable, saying that his part wasn't terribly interesting, it was not a thrilling film, and he would have hated it if it was his last. And Frank Oz basically said he had too much money and too responsible and concerned for Paramount and too concerned for the producers and didn't follow my instincts. So he was afraid that he was going to screw over the studios pretty much, it seems like. But yeah, and the film just fails miserably because it really does not know what kind of a film it wants to be, and the effects in this movie are so bad. There's one scene in particular where one of the wives, like there's the Stepford, the men in there are, I think the wife is played by Faith Hill, if I'm not mistaken, that does this, but he shows her that she can make money, and the way she does it is like an ATM, but he presses buttons and then money comes out of her mouth. And the way this thing looks, wow, does that look terrible. I don't think that is Faith Hill, though. I might have gotten the name wrong there, but that wasn't the point. The point I'm trying to make here is that you would have had a pretty cool idea here. You know, the idea that you can use your wife to basically, like, scan your cards and money comes out. But the way that looks is just, this was 2004. This was 20 years ago. Technology had advanced by then to make this look more realistic. That looks like something out of a computer game. Like my God, that right there should be another red flag against the film. This whole movie is such an unmitigated mess of a film. It just really, everything that was going on behind the scenes, all the production problems, it's right there in this movie. It's a film that really makes you look at it and go, like, what the hell were you guys trying to accomplish here? And it's just, I really don't know what they were trying to do here. I mean, and Paramount made some really good remakes around this time. There were a couple of movies there where they actually did make some really good remakes, like The Longest Yard, Last Holiday, Bad News Bears. So this wasn't around the time when they were just making bad remakes for the sake of just remaking stuff. And maybe they were, but this is a time when they were at least trying to do something with those remakes and succeeded for the most part. This is one of those ones that just fails right from the get-go. And it didn't help with the production problems plaguing the film from the very beginning. Usually a good director can usually take that away and do what he does best. But Frank Oz can usually be a reliable director, but this is just one of those ones where it's just like, this was just too much for him to handle. This was just too much for this movie to handle. It's a really bad movie. It's a really, really terrible film. It's just, I can't say any more except it's a really bad movie. You should avoid it like the plague. So, yeah, so we're 0 for 3 so far, but we've at least got one good movie out of this. I'd rather be 25% for the week than 0%. Am I right, or am I right, or am I right? Right? See, that time I was going to use that time that worked. But so what is that one great movie that came out this weekend? And that is Napoleon Dynamite. Of course, not only is this the film that introduced us to Jared Hess as a director, this is also the film that introduced us to John Heder, who has gone on to have a pretty okay career. I mean, he was really coming out strong early on, but then for some reason during the second half of the year, he just kind of vanished. I mean, he hasn't really done a whole lot in particular since then. But in this movie, he plays the title character of Napoleon Dynamite, who is a nerdy high school student who deals with several dilemmas, befriending an immigrant who wants to be class president, played by Ephraim Ramirez, and awkwardly pursuing a romance with a fellow student, played by Tina Majorno, who's from Andre and Waterworld, and living with his quirky family, including his uncle Rico, who is getting married to this woman, played by Chandrella Avery, and his grandmother, who I believe is played by, I can't remember her name, Sandy Martin. I said grandmother too, I think, but of course the movie is a film that has gone on to become a massive cult film. It has had success over the years. It's become one of those things where, 20 years after this movie came out, we had Orida having the thing with tater tots, because of course tater tots was one of the big things that people remember from this particular movie. And the movie just has this really quirky, unique edge to it. And I really did not like this movie at first. It took me a while to really understand how much what were people seeing in this movie in general that made him really make it as funny as it is to most people. And I think it was after I watched the Napoleon Dynamite TV series on Fox, which was a criminally underrated animated show that only lasted a couple of episodes. They didn't even get through one season before they pulled the plug on it. I'd honestly have that than Crapopolis right now in terms of what Fox Animation is right now. But it kind of turned me back around to the movie, and it's just like, okay, I can now see why, after watching the animated series, about why this character has had such a longevity to it, because we have been characters like this before in our lives. John Heder is that nerdy guy that that a lot of us used to be back in high school. I mean, I don't think I consider myself a nerd, but I wasn't very popular. I wasn't really I was socially awkward. It's probably the best way to describe it. And yeah, these are socially awkward people, but they're likable people, and you do get behind them, and you want to see them all succeed. You want to see, Pedro become a success. You want to see him become student body president, and you want to see Napoleon. You want to see him get through life. You want to see him get the girl. You want to see him go through these crazy adventures. And the film is very funny and very clever, and there's a strong cast of great talent behind the scenes to make it work. Hilary Duff's sister, Diedrich Bader as Rex is very funny in here, but it's Diedrich Bader. I mean, he usually can be very funny. John Grease is very good as Uncle Rico. Chandrella Avery is great as LaFonda. Sandy Martin is great as his grandmother. I mean, this is a great, great cast overall here. And it's a movie that has really gotten better over time in general. It's a film that I think really has been. It's a much better film that I think a lot of people, especially me, a lot of people, including myself, I was one of those people that really did not see why it was so good in the first place. But now time has gone on, and I've really seen the true magic of this movie here. It's a movie that takes time to really appreciate the true epicness of it. It's a great film, a very funny comedy, and it does take a while for you to eventually see the magic within it. It took me the animated series to really get myself back into it, but I can see why now, after all these years, of why this movie has had the longevity that it has. It's a really funny movie, man. It's a film that really is really great stuff here. And if you've seen Nacho Libre, this is a movie that you should see after watching Nacho Libre. I saw Nacho Libre as my first Jared Hess movie, so that was my introduction to him in general. But after that, you could probably skip his other stuff, because Gentlemen Broncos isn't a great movie, and I can't remember, has he made anything else of that? Any other movies besides the movie he got nominated for the Oscar for? Yeah, not some very good stuff. Don Verdine's not a great movie. Neither is Masterminds. I haven't seen Thelma the Unicorn yet. But it's one I've been kind of wanting to check out. It's on Netflix, and he's going to be doing the Minecraft movie. I've completely forgot he was doing that. But hey, maybe there's hope for him. Maybe there's hope for him down the road to get back on track to where he was before. So yeah, that's Napoleon Dynamite, and like I said, the one crowning jewel of a pretty lousy weekend of new releases. Now, next week, we have the complete opposite. We've got three movies. Two of them are great. One, I won't say it's bad, but yeah, it's one of the most notorious bombs of all time. But we'll take a look at Ben Stiller and Vince Vaughn in the comedy Dodgeball, a true underdog story. Probably Steven Spielberg's most underrated movie as a filmmaker, The Terminal. And Jackie Chan and Steve Coogan in Disney's Around the World in 80 Days, which on paper seems like a bad movie because it was a flop, but is it really? You might be surprised with what I have to say, but we'll take a look at those movies. That'll be on the next episode, as you can tell, we're wrapping up time about the movies for today. So, with that said, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the plays on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this on this channel. So, with that said, I am off. I will see you guys next time, and until then, as always, take care.